Vane.fm is our secondary kind of lead review, which is pretty big because this is a record that we have been looking forward to for a long time. It's called This World Is Going to Ruin You. There was a brief moment on the release day of this album a couple weeks ago when we were worried that we might have to ditch it and not cover it due to an incident that emerged from a show where they were alleged to have trashed a venue full of equipment and then tried to shoot the people who confronted them about it. But that story seemed to eat its own tail at record speed inside of a few hours.
R.I.P. Mike Stan.
Michael Stan, rest in peace. Yeah, not to wholly dismiss whatever the people on the other side of this had inflicted on them, but my gut reaction to that statement, the moment it didn't start with Vane are violent abusers or whatever, like, you know, the really serious allegations, they tend to start with something like that. It instead started with Vane FM disrespected Albuquerque hardcore last night. Like, the moment you led with making it a tribal regional thing, you kind of delegitimized it a little bit. But anyway, we are sorry for the mic stand that was lost, and seriously for any, you know, potential unprovoked violent action that were inflicted upon anybody. But as someone who wears Mayhem shirts, as it stands, it seemed to die down immensely quickly and seems to be accepted by people at large as not that serious, bro. So we're off ahead. What a way to announce your return with a fucking gun scuffle of Vane tried to shoot me. Sort of suiting for a record that sounds as nastily misanthropic as This World Is Going to Ruin You. Vane, from a 5-minute side of a split back in 2016, just announced themselves as the most fucked up, serrated new thing in hardcore. They then gave us Arizona, which is pretty much my favourite recent hardcore record, not by Code Orange. I loved the shit out of that album. Sam, I know you were as well. Alec, were you big on Arizona as I know me and Sam were?
I don't think I went as batty for them like everyone else did, but I really liked Arizona. It's like a kind of hyperactive, jumped up hardcore version of Slipknot, which was amazing. Like, just really exciting thing to hear.
Yeah, it's a hell of a debut album. It was just the most kind of exciting, like, blah, like ravenous burst of visceral chaos. And it used ideas from nu metal, industrial, post-hardcore, metalcore, these kind of things that were pointed at people as like, oh, throwbacks. But to me, just speaking about Ghost and kind of, you know, making old things sound contemporary, Vane are one of the bands who have never felt atavistic about that nu metal thing, as a lot of bands around are. It felt like making those things, you know, new and relevant, and it was just so fucking explosive and alive that it just made me go, oh my god, this is just the rush of intensity in a new young band that you live to hear.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like hardcore bands doing kind of like naughty screamo and post-hardcore or nu metal, it's not new, but a lot of those bands like take the Blood Youth album we talked about last year, which I quite liked, but that just felt like, you know, a hardcore band doing nu metal stuff without trying to make it sound contemporary in any way, whereas Vane, they took a much more kind of like, we are going to take these elements of nu metal and just like mangle it into something way more cutting edge, way more contemporary. And they do the same with the bits of screamo, the bits of industrial. It's they do what the Code Orange approach of taking it and making it sound cutting edge.
Yeah, they did then go silent for what felt like quite a while, during which they added the .fm suffix onto their name. I think they've said it's not like a legal thing, as we maybe all kind of naturally jumped to expecting it to be, but it's kind of a world building thing of like, they're all in different projects and stuff like that, and it's like tying all these things they do under the kind of one FM banner. But I did also, I read an interview where they said that no one actually says the .fm part out loud when they talk about Vane, so that's a nice thing to know, to kind of excuse me forgetting to say it all the time. Vane FM, just Vane out loud apparently, so that's cool. This record was actually recorded in 2020, so the wait between the two albums has been kind of artificially prolonged for double the real length. But Vane so solidified themselves as a favourite in this scene with Arizona that there was a bit of a sense of like, with this time away and with that much expectation, this album better be good. And say what you like about Vane, whether you think they are derivative or whatever, I don't think it can be said that the jumps between each of their releases haven't been pretty noticeably large.
Yeah, I think there is. This is not just doing Arizona again. This is its own different beast. You still have, like, say, the through line of that split through to now, and you feel the band, but there is definitely a different tact, a different approach to how they're doing a lot of the things here.
Yeah, and if you look at kind of the gap between, the split and the debut album as 2 years, the jump there in things like songcraft and, introduction of other elements is pretty fucking large.
Yeah.
They've done maybe not so large a jump, but a again, very noticeable leap and progression again.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, I guess with that, because I think I'm the person here of the three of us who kind of listens to hardcore the least. And I hate kind of reviewing other people's reviews and things like that. But one thing that I've seen a lot of people pick up on is say that with this band Vane, so it's like Vane FM, like Sun O bracket. Okay, got it.
Yeah,
thank you, Paris.
That's a good comparison, actually.
Yeah, saying that Vane are like moving hardcore forward, and they are developing the genre. They are doing something new. I guess is it because I really like this, and I'm not going to say it's derivative or whatever, because again I'm going to bat for Sabaton next. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I would say I've not seen any particular, comment about if you're citing a review there or something, or someone saying that, it's the next big thing moving hardcore forward. I think a lot of the time music writers like hyperbole, and I wouldn't necessarily back things to, I like to make those kind of statements more reservedly for the things that really, really are. I will say that Vane are really developing their own sound and really pushing what they do forward and kind of advancing what it means to be Vane, which I think is what is worth highlighting here and what is exciting about it.
I don't think this is necessarily a game changer for hardcore, but Vane have really carved out their own kind of take on the most kind of savage, ferocious, noisy hardcore, and I do think this is doing a lot of really cool things, and like I say, when I say it is bringing ideas from the past, it's not just kind of regurgitating them. I love the Sea Space Cowboy album, but that was kind of a real just kind of straight up throwback to a lot of noughties, post-hardcore and screamo. There is moments of that on this Vane record, but they feel a lot more kind of dragged screaming into the Vane sound rather than kind of just a throwback element.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with what you guys say. It is a new kind of a take on Vane. It's way darker than Arizona, isn't it? It's bleak.
The key thing that I really loved about Arizona is their riff writing and songwriting was so incisive in terms of there's a lot of hardcore that just kind of beats you and you go numb to it, and there's not a lot of, I guess, agility in it, but the pointed, serrated edge of Vane's attack, it's like fucking stabbing you in the eyes with scissors, and they made that so fluid and catchy. When we got the Killing Womb from this album, we commented, it was it's got those things, but it's kind of slowed down, it's meaner, and I think this record is less technical on a kind of second per second basis than Arizona, but it's more brooding, and it is over the course of its runtime, it's over half an hour for the first time in their career, and it's a more dynamic kind of record, and it's very relatable as Vane, and you can stick it on after Arizona and kind of see it as a continuation, but it does have a different side to it, which is pretty cool. And when you say about that, say what you like about the current boom in hardcore, how many great albums it's produced, whatever, the albums are rarely immersive, and similar, I guess, to kind of Knocked Loose's recent horror EP, but I would say even more so here with the kind of cinematic elements that this employs. Vane show a talent for that with this album.
Yeah, this is one of the most immersive hardcore records I've listened to in recent years. It is full on. You are going to live in this dingy, dark, nightmarish world for 32 minutes. You say it's over half an hour. 1/3 of that is made up by 2 songs.
Yeah, we'll get to that, but it is. Yeah,
but so the first 2/3 of the album is still just song, just blasting all these ideas at you. But it's Vane are really good at sequencing albums. I mean, that's one thing I will say. Arizona had the same thing where it flowed so well, again, to really pull you in. This has a similar thing, and I think that's one of the things that makes it so immersive, is it's so well sequenced. But it's just constantly just suffocating you under the sort of the weight of noise and then violently stabbing you. It is a horrible, nasty record.
Yeah, well, Arizona, again, to kind of just punctuate that kind of difference a little bit more, something like Virus Vibrance, every single hit at such high speed, so precisely honed. It's one of the most ballistic, exciting, heavy songs of the past 5 years still. That felt like it was jamming knives into your eyes like 50 times a second, and this record is more lining your bed with them, waiting for you to get into it. Like, it feels like songs like Doom Tech on the first record have kind of formed more of a roadmap for that kind of more slowly insidious, atmospheric kind of approach.
Yeah, like I feel like I'm in that whatever it is, burning building or whatever on the front cover. Like it's yeah, like I think thought a band that were kind of famed for these like feral live shows, and Aerozone, which was just like blah, just this like blast of just energy. Yeah, it's well atmospheric, and there's new bits and bobs sprinkled throughout.
Yeah, on its own, The Killing Womb is a kind of insanely destructive hardcore song, but when you put it against the Aerozone songs, it rides a riff for way longer and kind of glowers in that a bit more. Still the best breakdown of the year thus far, fucking incredible in that last 20 seconds or so. But they are leaning more into this kind of scary, misanthropic sound with more than a tinge of horror. They recruited a turntablist called Benno Levine in 2019, which on one hand you can scoff and go like, oh, turntables, obvious new metal move. The end of Inside Design on this is probably the biggest moment of straight up fucking turntable scratching, which is quite retro. But what I really like about this album is that you said went straight for the Slipknot thing, Alec, which many people do, and a lot of that is like, oh, breakbeats in Virus Vibrance, but here it's like Tattered and Torn and those kind of tracks where it's like those peripheral nightmarescape elements that are just there scratching at your kind of psyche. There's those little upsetting, out of tune key stabs in the Killing Womb riff make it, and that kind of touch is really present a lot more across this album, which is a big bonus.
Yeah, it seems like the opening to Lights, so you get that sort of like door closing and then the sort of the scream sound that like it really feels like it's putting you into the sort of the darkness of the album. And there are a lot of the samples used across this record have been just part of their live shows since they brought the guy in. There are a lot of the samples he used as kind of interludes and like little bits in between songs as part of the live show. So they've now taken them and properly incorporated them into songs now, which is like cool trick to kind of like build on ideas they've had planted as part of the live show for a few years.
Yeah, I do think that Slipknot comparison as well. Like, I hope it didn't sound lazy or anything, but like what I mean by that as well, in like I think that's carried through quite well here. That like when a lot of comparisons on Aerozone were to self-titled Slipknot, a lot of stuff on this would be like the kind of darker stuff on Iowa, like Gently and thing and like Skin Ticket and things like that. Just that really murky, like Killing Womb again, like you were saying. Like there's weird little percussive sparks in the intro and that like dink little like piano bit. It's so unnerving and weird sounding.
Yeah, that fucking the piano being sucked into a vortex in Versus Wyoming, which is like a 50-second just chaos transition basically between Killing Womb and Fear in Nonfiction more than anything else. I agree about the album sequencing, Sam. There are a couple of tracks on this that are kind of they're pieces of the album more than really songs in their own right. But you get things broken up by something like Wherever You Are, which I love so much for being on this album. This like really seedy lounge music in the basements of Sodom and Gomorrah, fucking creepy as hell, like swing song. And it punctuates the album and it gives you a moment to kind of compose yourself for another round of fist swinging so brilliantly, while making the album, more atmospheric for its presence, as do, the ambient touches in like the last 30 seconds or so of Orgy in the Morgue, those kind of things. There are songs where they'd really embrace the carnage and, keep those kind of like mathy, wild Boston hardcore elements. Something like Lights Out is as ferocious as anything, but that real flavour is noticeably more so.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but like on the kind of flip side, I guess, you got something like Fear in Nonfiction, which is when fucking Jeff Rickley comes in, I was full on Mark Corrigan, like, Jeff, as in Jeff? Like, it was a really, really nice addition. Like, I did not see that coming. I hadn't looked at
such a moment when he comes in it.
Yeah, and it's like, this band, who are doing that on the previous record, can have Jeff Rickley on this, and it doesn't sound, like, mental. Like, it sounds like it was written for him. It's really impressive.
Like they had those like sort of melodic moments on the previous record, but this one that feels like the first one where they have a sort of a proper lift in the melody where you have Jeff Rickley come in, and that's one of those songs that really you can really feel that naughty screamo like thing. So it makes total sense getting the guy from Thursday to come in and guest on
Well,
it.
I mean,
but
he
it
just
is-
has that just so inherent in his voice because that's who he is,
Yeah.
and he kind of helps.
But even before that, where you have some of the cleans earlier on in the song as well, like it definitely has that feel to it.
Yeah.
Magazine Beach is the other one that I think like really reminds me of that kind of noughties scream thing. And again, you've got those kind of like drowned out, sort of lose my mind vocals
Yeah.
in the back
Yeah,
of it.
well,
Like that's a really cool song.
Just go back to Fear and Non-Fiction a second and Jeff Rickley's performance. He really stands out in terms of being like, he's really cleaner in the mix and everything else around him, but it is
Yeah.
a brilliant use of vocal melody. And for people who are like shocked by that moment in a Vane song, it's not totally new or alien. Like they did songs like Doom Tech and Aerozone's title track where vocal melody was a prominent thing, but this is just like, a larger extrapolation of that kind of thing. And I agree. I was about to go on to the more startling, surprising use of melody, I think, is in Magazine Beach, which is bloody brilliant because that is a minute and a half of like all high speed. But I'm not sure if it's a guest vocalist again. I think Anthony is singing on it, but it could also be like a chopped up sample of like a female voice or something against him.
I think it is like
Which is, if that's so, that's ingenious, and it makes such a compact high speed song so emotionally dynamic with how it kind of laces those like almost disembodied fragments of a voice like into the abrasive hardcore. It's really, really well done and real highlight.
I mean that's one of the areas where the craft has really been stepped up here, where they can chop up and like layer in all these other things. Like for a hardcore record, there is so much going on that it will take quite a few listens to really pick out all the little bits. But as you start to do it and you get those like that vocal bit on Magazine Beach, and like we always get this almost like it almost sort of starts to feel like it's going to take off and hit a kind of like soaring melodic bit, but it never quite does because they're smothering it in the intensity the entire time. Like they really chop and change things up in like a cool way across this record.
Yeah, Magazine Beach, just it starts with that mad fill and the kind of break beaty bit, like you're saying, and then when you're talking about it, kind of feeling like it's gonna build to something. It almost feels like something quite grand and like stately, like I don't know, like something like Deftones or something like that, kind of eerie washes of like Steph Carpenter guitar or something that's just like nope, done. Onto Inside Design. There we go.
That sledgehammer of a riff on Inside Design that immediately follows it.
Yeah, and with the lengthier album, it kind of stretches out more as it enters the latter stages. The last 3 songs are all increasingly longer than the one before. Orgy in the Morgue, just amazing title. But it's like Killing Womb. It's kind of a bit more of a bruiser that lets the riffs, ring out a little bit more, as opposed to kind of disposing of them immediately. But then particularly the last 2 songs, where it really feels like, that house that you're in has burned down around you and you're just sat in the middle of this, ruin, inhaling the ashes for Wavery and Funeral Sound. They work really well as a kind of suite like that. Like Wavery is heavy, but it never quite boots off to like full, fucking math vein explosion levels. And then you let that sink into the opening ambient side of Funeral Sound for a while, and then when that does boot off, even though it feels like a pretty predictable trick to do with that song, like that's like wait for a few minutes and then just go, it's such an emotionally cathartic way to end the album. Like when it picks up, it's like, oh my god, like yeah, this is the fucking moment I want at the end of this fucking dark, compact little nightmare.
Yeah, like having a Vane song that sort of starts with these really somber pianos and like isolated vocals, that feels like that them going for we're gonna like have that emotional moment before it kicks off, but it's just really satisfying when they pull it off on this record.
It's earned as well, because I did look at it and I was like, hey guys, we're gonna do a long song at the end of the end of the album to show that we're diverse and we can do all these crazy things. It's like no, because they've earned it. They've done more than enough across the record to justify having something like Funeral Sound at the end. And it really does its job, doesn't it? Like that, again, especially that vocal hook, that "This World Is Going to Ruin You," is so slick. I love that.
Yeah, I think that in that interview I was reading, they were saying that like they didn't have the album title, they were doing that, and they were like, that there, it's got to be the fucking album title. And yeah, it's great. I agree with what you're saying about in terms of like there are so many bands who would just do a fucking bog standard like heavy record and then put that song at the end and be like, wow, look, we're really pushing ourselves. Whereas Vane, like, it's not the most I guess challenging thing that Vane have done on this record. It's just a different kind of side that they do. It feels warranted at the end as opposed to like a get out of jail free card for doing fuck all on the rest of the record. I just think that so much of what's going on at the moment that people are excited about is quite retro. And Vane have had that thrown at them of like, you know, you're just doing these new metal things. And it's like, yeah, there are those elements, but this isn't fucking Tala, is it? Like, this is one of the best examples of a band looking backwards for some pointers, but taking that into the current day and sounding, you know, fresh and reinvigorated with it. This album doesn't sound like it could have come out 20 years ago. It's got elements from that time, but it doesn't sound in its recording or how it's pieced together or anything like it's just a relic of that. And their personality is what threads all of that together. It's not just putting a bunch of old ideas at the forefront and expecting to ride on that alone.
No, I think that's so that like I said, it is taking those old ideas and doing it as Vane, essentially, like and doing Vane's interpretation of these like retro ideas and making it sound unique in the process.
Yeah, no, it's fucking great. Again, I think I'm less mad about it than both of you, but it's quite an achievement, isn't it?
How do you like this one compared to Aerozone, Sam? Because I think, you know, I'm similar to what I was fucking saying about Ghost with, like, you know, it's a record that does a slightly different thing, and I might prefer the previous thing, but I'm happy to have the furthering of an idea and have different sides of this band come out.
So I think overall this is a more interesting album, but it doesn't have Virus Vibrance on it, or like a moment like that of just a song that is just a proper shit kicker.
Yeah, it's really good though. I do love the art.
I do really love this record. It's one of my favourite albums of the year so far.
Yeah.
Like, it's just been a insane year for challenging, intense, heavy music already. Like,
yeah,
I hope it continues.
Really has. I do love the art design for it as well. Like most hardcore bands, I'm not really interested in buying their merch because it's normally boring or ugly, but like there's a really cohesive and awesome aesthetic for something like this that, like you were saying, Alec, it kind of feeds into the mood of the record as well. So like I'd buy a shirt for this album. Vane, This World Is Going to Ruin You